They called her Lin Gio, Queen Lin, because she was never still. Up in the mountains of Mu Kang Chai, where terraced rice paddies shimmer like dragon scales and clouds graze rooftops, Lin was known not for beauty or shyness, but for her restlessness, always climbing trees, always chasing birds, always listening to wind that whispered in tongues only she understood. Her village carved spoons, bowls, combs, practical things. But Lin, she carved wind, not literally, but if you looked at her pieces, thin, flowing, impossible curves, you'd swear they were moving. Leaves caught mid-twirl, a child's scarf in a breeze, even the tail of a wooden fox curling like smoke. But no one bought her carvings. Too strange, the elders said, too soft. It needs art that can't sit flat. So Lin carved in secret, on old bamboo, on fence posts, even on the back of her father's shovel once, earning her a week of silence from him. Then one day, an American man arrived. He wore dusty boots, carried 2 cameras, and spoke bad Vietnamese with an accent that made the kids giggle. His name was Jonah, a documentary filmmaker. He was looking for stories, real ones. Not tourist shows, he said, laughing. I want soul, dirt, silence. Someone mentioned Lin. He found her by the stream, carving a branch into the shape of a gust. He watched for a while, then said in slow, careful English, "You carve the wind?" She blinked, then nodded. He pointed to the piece. "Sell?" She shook her head. "Not sell, not finished." He smiled. "Then I stay. Watch." And so he stayed. 1 day, 2, then a week, filming, asking questions, learning her rhythm, learning that Lin didn't speak much, but when she carved, the whole valley leaned in to listen. If you've ever created something the world didn't understand, but you kept creating anyway, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and follow the wind with us as it moves through hands, hills, and hope. That night, Jonah showed her one of his videos. Her carving under morning light, spinning gently on a flat rock. "It looks alive," he said. Lin smiled. "It was," she whispered. Jonah found it by accident. A small wooden box tucked beneath a folded blanket beneath another blanket inside a clay jar, buried like a secret that had teeth. He hadn't meant to snoop. He was just looking for a place to charge his battery pack. But when he lifted the lid and saw what was inside, he stopped breathing. It was a carving, unlike anything Lin had shown him. A storm, but not just in shape, in feeling. Sharp edges, a spiral that pulled the eye inward. Lightning etched in lines so fine they looked like hair. At the center, a girl curled in a hollow, hands over her ears. It hurt to look at, not because it was ugly, but because it was true. When Lin returned, he was still holding it. She froze. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said quietly. "I didn't mean, it's not for filming." "Okay," he said. "What is it?" She hesitated, then sat down beside him. "It was the first one I ever made," she said, "when I was 9. 9? He asked. "It's incredible. It's a scream," she said. "A carving of a scream I couldn't let out." He looked again. "What happened?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the box and pulled out another piece. Smaller, cracked. It looked like a wooden flute, twisted and broken. "My mother carved that," she said, before she left. Jonah blinked. "Left?" "She went to the city. Said she'd send money. Never came back." "I'm sorry." Lin shrugged, but her voice was different now. She was the only one who said my carvings weren't useless. Before she left, she gave me that flute. Said, "Even if no one hears your song, play it anyway. Jonah nodded slowly. You never showed this to anyone? She shook her head. The village says I'm wasting time, that I should marry, work, make spoons. He looked at the storm again. This, he said, needs to be seen. She laughed bitterly. Not everything broken needs an audience. He paused, then quietly. Maybe not, but maybe someone else has the same storm. If you've ever hidden a part of yourself because it felt too painful, too strange, too true, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and discover what happens when the most personal carvings finally see the light. That night, Lynn placed a storm carving on her windowsill. For the first time, she let the moon touch it. And maybe that was enough. The wind didn't come the next day. No whisper in the trees, no rustle in the tall grass. Just stillness, like the world had pressed pause. Lynn sat at her carving stump, tools beside her, a fresh block of godoi in her lap. But nothing moved. No lines, no curves, not even a thought. Jonah was nearby adjusting his tripod, but he sensed it too. You okay? He asked. She nodded, then shook her head. I can't hear it, she whispered. Hear what? The wind. The voice he put down the camera. You've carved every day for years, said. Maybe your mind just needs a break. But she didn't answer. Her fingers tightened on the chisel, then loosened, then clenched again. It's not a break, she said. It's silence. It feels like forgetting who I am. Jonah sat beside her. I get that, he said. When I lost my dad, I didn't touch my camera for 6 months. She looked at him surprised. You, but you film everything. I do now. But back then, the lens just felt empty. Like nothing I saw were worth keeping. She nodded slowly. That's what this feels like. Like the wood is laughing at me. Like I never knew how to carve at all. They sat in silence. Then he asked, what did you do to start again? He smiled. I stopped trying to create and just documented. Documented? I filmed leaves, or women washing rice, kids chasing chickens. Not because it was art, but because it was real. Lynn thought about that, then stood. She didn't grab a chisel. She walked down to the river and sat for 2 hours, watching water slide over stone, listening to a frog croak, smelling the damp bark of a mango tree. She didn't sketch, didn't think, just breathe. That night, she returned with nothing in her hands, but her eyes were different. If you've ever hit a wall, not because you lacked talent, but because the world went quiet, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and stay with us through the stillness, where silence is not the end, but the space before the wind returns. The next morning, Lynn carved, not a storm, not a scream, just a small leaf, floating gently on water. It was the softest thing she had ever made. He came at sunrise, walking with a limp and carrying a plastic bag. No one knew him. He wasn't from the village. His accent was from the lowlands, smoother, like someone used to talking too much. He found Lynn outside her home, sanding the edges of her water leaf carving. You are the one who carves wind? He asked. Lynn looked up, cautious. I carve what I feel. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then I hope you can carve what I feel. He sat down slowly and opened the plastic bag. Inside was a prosthetic hand, old, cracked. The fingers locked in an unnatural curve like they were always gripping something that wasn't there. My name is Term, he said. I lost this arm building roads in Kontum. They gave me this thing. Plastic. Cold. Doesn't feel like mine? Lynn didn't speak. She stared at the hand and then at the man. He pulled out a sketch, crude, drawn with a shaking pencil. "I want a wooden one," he said. "Not to function, just to belong." "Belong?" she echoed. "To me?" he said softly. "This one never did." Lynn hesitated. "I don't carve body parts. I'm not asking for precision," he said. "I'm asking for memory." Jonah, who had been filming from a distance, stepped closer. "You sure about this?" he whispered. Lynn nodded. She asked Tim to place his remaining hand on a block of wood. She traced it, slowly, carefully, then sat for a long time, just looking. "How did it feel?" she asked finally, when he lost the first one. He closed his eyes, like forgetting how to pray. That night, Lynn didn't sleep. She sanded late into the night. Every cut, every groove, not to recreate what was lost, but to speak back to it, to say, "You mattered, you still do." If you've ever felt like part of you didn't belong, or needed someone to shape it back into meaning, this moment is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and carve with us through memory, loss, and the beauty of making things whole again. When she finally gave the wooden hand to Tim, he didn't speak. He simply placed it beside the plastic one. And for the first time in decades, his fingers stopped shaking. The invitation arrived on rice paper, carried by a cousin from the valley. "You are cordially invited to carve at the Lahoyam Vang, the Festival of Echoes, in Sa Pa, this full moon." Lynn had never left the mountains. Her world was mist, rice, wood, and silence. Sa Pa to her might as well have been another country. But Jonah grinned when he read the invite. "This is it," he said. "A chance to let the world hear your wind." She hesitated. "What if they don't understand it?" "They don't have to," he said. "They just have to feel it." The festival was a blur of color and chaos. Drums, dance, chants echoing off stone streets. Craftspeople from all over Vietnam had come. Potters from Hoi An, lacquer painters from Hu, and sculptors from Da Nang with machines loud enough to shake dust from rooftops. And then there was Lynn, barefoot, quiet, a girl with a stump, a block of rosewood, and a chisel she'd inherited from her grandfather. People watched her with curiosity. She didn't put on a show. She didn't look up. She carved, a spiral, a ripple, a single note in motion. Then she heard the voice, software broken, from behind the crowd. "Lynn?" She froze. The chisel trembled in her hand. She turned and saw a woman, older now, thinner, with eyes that knew too much, standing behind a stall of woven cloth. "Me?" Lynn whispered. The woman nodded. "I saw your name on the poster. I didn't think. I just came." Lynn stood. The crowd faded, the drums were gone. "Why?" she asked, voice shaking. "I was ashamed," her mother said. "I left to earn, but I lost more than money. I lost you." Lynn didn't answer. Her hand reached into her satchel. She pulled out a small wooden flute, cracked but whole. "I kept it," she said. The woman cried. You've ever waited years for someone to come back and didn't know what you'd say when they did? This story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and follow the echoes through distance, silence, and the carvings we carry in our blood. That night, Lynn didn't carve. She sat with her mother under lantern light, hands touching the same flute. No wind, just breathe. The commission came 2 weeks after the festival. A private collector from Hanoi had seen Jonah's video, the one where Lynn carved the swirl into the heart of silence. He wanted a large piece, a center display for his gallery. Something that feels alive, he wrote. Something the eye can't fully hold. It was more money than Lynn had ever imagined. Enough to rebuild her parents' roof. Enough to send her youngest cousin to school. She said yes. She chose a block of red cam lime. Hard, beautiful, stubborn. It had deep veins like blood frozen in wood. Every strike of a chisel echoed through her arms. Jonah filmed parts of the process. He watched her sleep beside the unfinished sculpture and watched her talk to it, whisper things, apologize for imperfections, praise it for staying still under pressure. The piece grew. Wings unfurled from a body of wind. A woman's face turned to the sky, eyes closed, mouth open in a silent cry. Her hair flowed back, not in strands, but in carved gusts. It was Lynn's most ambitious work. And then it cracked, right through the center. She heard it before she saw it. A long, slow crook, like a branch breaking in winter. She turned. The face she spent 20 hours shaping now bore a fracture from cheek to collarbone. She fell to her knees. No, she whispered. No. Jonah ran in. What happened? It split. I didn't see the weakness. It's ruined. He studied the crack. It's not ruined. It's broken. He knelt beside her. So are most of us. She didn't answer. That night, she sat with the piece, her chisel untouched, her hands on the wood like a healer listening for breath. Then, she began to carve again, not to erase the crack, but to honor it. She turned the fracture into a vine, a winding, blooming stem that reached across the woman's throat. She carved blossoms blooming out of the brokenness, a story, not of perfection, but of survival. If you've ever felt that one mistake would ruin everything, but found a way to keep going anyway, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and learn how even broken things can become the most beautiful part of the whole. When the collector saw it, he didn't ask about the crack. He stared at it for a long time, then said, I didn't expect to feel this much. Lynn just smiled. Neither did I. The letter arrived without a stamp. Just a small envelope slipped under her door in the early dawn. Inside was a single sheet of rice paper. No name, no return address, only a line written in faded blue ink. Can you carve silence for me? Lynn stared at it for a long time. She turned it over. No mark, no hint. She reread the sentence. Can you carve silence for me? She thought it was a joke at first, but the handwriting wasn't playful. It was fragile, like it came from someone who had used the last of their courage just to write that sentence. She showed it to Jonah. Creepy, he said, half joking, then softer, but kind of beautiful too. She nodded. For the next 3 days, she didn't carve. She listened. The wind on corrugated roofs, the roosters in the dark before dawn, to the way her own breath moved through her teeth when she wasn't thinking. Then she picked up a block of black munwood. Rare, hard, nearly silent under the blade. She didn't plan the design. She just let it happen. The shape emerged slowly, a doorway without a frame, an open hand resting on the threshold. A line of stones leading away, then vanishing into nothing. On the back, she carved a child curled into a blanket sound asleep. The piece had no title. When Jonah saw it, he didn't speak for a long time. It hurts, he said finally, but in a way that makes you feel safe. She smiled. That's silence. They placed it in the window of the village's tiny communal house. No price, no name, just a small note beside it, for whoever needs it. A week later, the piece was gone. In its place, another note. Thank you. I lost someone. but for a moment, I heard them again. If you've ever tried to explain a feeling that had no words, but found it instead in music, in sculpture, or in stillness, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and witness how silence too can be carved and speak back. That night, Lynn carved something small, a pebble with a single groove down the center. She placed it by her bed, not as decoration, but as a promise. The email came from New York. A curator from the Metropolitan Museum had stumbled across Jonah's documentary. She wrote with urgency, but also grace. Your artist, Lynn, has a rare voice. We'd like to invite her to exhibit in our Voices from the Earth collection. Travel, lodging, and representation included. Her work will speak to many. Jonah read it aloud, beaming. Lynn stayed quiet. It's the Met, he said. You know what that means? She nodded, but her eyes were on the hills outside, on the trees swaying, on the children running barefoot between rice stalks, on the stump where she carved her first spiral into a scrap of bamboo. She said nothing for 3 days. Then she climbed the highest ridge above the village, alone. There, the wind was loud again, the same wind that first taught her how to listen. It pulled at her shirt, tugged her hair, whispered things not in words, but in pull, in rhythm and breath. When she returned, she walked straight to Jonah. I'll go, she said. His face lit up. Yes, I'll help pack. But, she added, not forever. He blinked. You mean, just for the exhibit? She nodded. I'll show them the wind, but I will not live in silence. She prepared 5 pieces for the Met, each one a memory of the mountain. The girl who heard the river, the mother who returned, the fractured face that bloomed, the hand that remembered, the door without walls. Each was packed with care, not wrapped to protect them, but to bless them, like gifts sent to a child who has gone far, but is still loved. Before she left, she carved one final piece, a smooth, curved bowl. Empty, simple. She placed it in the center of the village square with no sign. When the elders asked her what it was, she replied, a place for the next wind to rest. If you've ever stood between leaving and staying, and chose both in your own way, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and walk with us as we carry home wherever we go, one carving at a time. As the plane took off, Jonah turned to her. What will you carve when we land? Lynn looked out the window and smiled. The sky.